TGIF, thank God it's Friday. I'm listening to Rush Limbaugh on One Sir Grove. This is Casting 495 Celebrities Worldwide, C4CW. Thank you for tuning in. Rush is talking about something interesting. He's talking about how AOC, she, being the dum-dum that she is, how she's talking about how there are 12 years left on planet Earth. Just some fucking arbitrary number that she came up with. And he's saying that even as dumb as a box of rocks as she is, this is what basically Rush Limbaugh was saying, that she doesn't really believe that we have only 12 years left. And we don't have just 12 years left. Let me explain why and how I know this. So, by the way, if you're a real fucking fan and not a fake one, man, we495 most fucking certainly appreciate you. Thank you seriously for tuning in. So look, man. So I was at DOD for a defense activity, which is that I worked in the medical wing of 2 Air Force bases. More specifically, I worked in the IT department, and I also worked in a legacy system. So it wasn't just the medical healthcare system wing arm of the U.S. Air Force. I would go around the bases, 2 different bases, Bowling Air Force Base and Joint Base Andrews. And we would look for antiquated devices that were collecting dust. We would research those devices and determine what type of troubleshooting would need to take place, if the devices could be powered on, if there were serial numbers, any type of information suggesting what type of device it was and or might be, and we would further, if needed, research that information. And if we needed to get other folks involved, then we would, in terms of technicians, engineers, scientists, programmers, etc. So legacy systems, older, sometimes outmoding, not necessarily outmoded, but near obsolete, but not necessarily obsolete, just old, antiquated, dinosaur motherfucking computer systems. They could be large, mainframes. They could be, medium-sized, somewhere in between, desktop computers, mini supers, mini supercomputers. They could be handheld devices, anything, thermal printers, scanners, Xerox machines, you name it. So in that equation there, and as part of that activity, I learned of a program that was a DoD, Department of Defense, joint academia exploration of crowd-sourced data, information, intelligence. In other words, while I was working at Joint Base Andrews and Bowling Air Force Base, I got wind of a program that the Department of Defense was operating in conjunction with the university system. And it involved certain science that had decoded that soccer moms are smarter on the average. Some of them, some soccer moms have this uncanny ability, and not just soccer moms. I say that loosely. I mean, just kind of as a generalization. Normal folk, average, everyday folk. The veil of secrecy in terms of Sherman Kent Center for Analysis, CIA analytic tradecraft. In other words, the Directorate of Intelligence, folks who sit down at a desk, pen, pencil, writing materials, notebook, notepad, laptop computer, or just textbook and they study information. Any type of information. Esoteric, arcane, mainstream, current, national intelligence estimates, projections, trends, science, history, you name it. Classified fields that are unknown in the public space. I'm talking about fields of study that the names of those fields of study themselves are classified. Mainstream society doesn't even know those fields of study exist. So fields of knowledge exist. So Sherman Kent Center for Intelligence Analysis Tradecraft, over some decades since 1947 approximately, and even before that, the forerunner to CIA, Office of Strategic Services, and other groups, intel groups. Science, that is the Defense Science Office, DSO, Delta Sierra Oscar, for the entire Department of Defense and defense intelligence community as a whole, scientists decoded that despite CIA's and the U.S. intelligence community's history of employing and hiring folks of the highest caliber from Ivy League schools, top schools, geniuses, prodigies, people who are just smart, but largely, chiefly, mostly college, university graduates from top universities with top scores. Culling from that subset of the population and then positioning those individuals in said roles as folks working in analytic tradecraft, intelligence analysis. Science decoded that those folks aren't always necessarily the best and the brightest, per se. They're not necessarily the most brilliant in that field, the most keen, the most knowledgeable, the most accurate. Hey, listen, CIA agency will be the first to tell you that CIA's gotten it wrong many times. CIA will also let you know that there are a lot of times where CIA got it right, and America, thank God, America as a whole didn't know that CIA got it right. And because CIA did get it right, the world is still here. Yes, it's true, thanks to CIA. I'm talking about having avoided some doomsday scenario type shit. So there are a lot of people out there, foreign and otherwise, and they point their finger at CIA. Fuck CIA, fuck the United States. You're a bunch of terrorists, you're a bunch of murderers, you're a bunch of this, you're a bunch of that. They have no fucking clue. CIA has actually helped the world avoid cataclysm on not just one occasion. Albeit, when looking at the history and the performance of analytic tradecraft folks who are considered analysts traditionally, those who, again, they perform the complex task of intelligence analysis using different methods, techniques to conduct intelligence research analysis. They're not always accurate. So, at some point in history, in the not too distant past, science figured out that somehow, some way, soccer moms and average folk in mainstream society, somehow, again, some way, they perform better and more accurately in terms of world global predictions. And it threw the U.S. intelligence community for a loop. The agency scrambled to figure out how and why. What is the phenomenon? How does it work? How is it that these people know these things, geopolitically speaking, and know them as accurately as some of these individuals in mainstream society know? If they haven't had any formal training, if they haven't had any advanced formal education, how the fuck do they know these things? Nonetheless, U.S. Intel figured this out. Was it by chance? Well, there are a lot of factors involved in terms of how the Defense Science Office and the defense intelligence community figured it out. Notwithstanding, when it was figured out when it came to be known that people in the mainstream flow of society, some of them have these gifts, these talents. The intelligence community created a program through the defense intelligence community, the defense science community, working in concert with, tandem with, the system of academia, colleges, universities, a handful of them. And so over the course of multiple years, these numerous universities advertised openly that they were looking for people who have at least a high school education and general knowledge, just basic knowledge of the world and what goes on. So they would ask questions like, do you have a GED or high school diploma? Okay. Do you know basic algebra? If A equals 1, B equals 2, what's A plus B? And that was it. If you could answer literally like, say, 10 different questions, then you could quite possibly, potentially be accepted into this program. So once someone entered into that program, that person was paid as a participant in this exploration of essentially hyperspace intelligence gathering. Because what we're talking about here are people who are gifted like Ingo Swann, people who are gifted like Joseph McMoneagle. Those are individuals who were part of the Stanford Research Institute program that operated jointly with CIA, which was known as Stargate, the Stargate program. And that was headed up by Russell Targ. If you look up Russell Targ, if you Google Russell Targ was the laser physicist, lasers, optics, physics, and he was co-opted by CIA to spearhead the remote viewing program for the Central Intelligence Agency. Under Russell Targ were, as indicated, Joseph McMoneagle, Ingo Swann, and a multitude of other individuals who were recruited into that program. What's really interesting, if you listen to Joseph McMoneagle, he had been in the Vietnam War, and he had fallen ill, and at some point, he revealed to folks in the military establishment when undergoing evaluation that somehow, some way, he could see the future. Now, to what degree of accuracy, my understanding is that he obviously didn't know everything that was going to happen. Like, he couldn't pick lottery numbers and whatnot. But there were certain snapshots of the future that he could see quite crystal clearly. And he could prove these different events. So he later went on to become one of the most talented, one of the most powerful, and one of the most gifted remote viewer psychics. Because we're talking about someone who was able to see snapshots of the future and remote view events in hyperspace that had not occurred yet that would later occur on record and could be proven definitively, succinctly, concisely, and absolutely. So he was awarded the highest medal of honor that can be bestowed upon someone by the president and the U.S. intelligence community, because he was able to find in hyperspace, going out as energy into the multiverse, a Russian, that is Soviet, rocket system that was missile delivery system, if you will, that was being developed out in the middle of nowhere, shrouded in massive secrecy. He saw it being constructed before it was actually constructed. And then years down the road, satellite and other information was able to prove that that missile launch system was under construction exactly to a geometric T as he had remote viewed. There were remote viewers who saw 9/11 before it happened, but they didn't know exactly what building. They didn't know exactly what city. They didn't know exactly who was involved, but they saw 9/11. There are a lot of instances of remote viewers doing these absolutely mind-bending, mind-blowing, remarkable, amazing things in terms of becoming energy that leaves the human shell vessel body, going out into the multiverse and observing non-linear time. Non-linear time. Because that's something else that we scientists decoded in the defense science community. Time is non-linear. Time is malleable. Time can be modified and altered. Time is not static. So when you look deeper into this knowledge, you find that the Egyptians and even pre-Egyptians, ancient civilizations, they had this type of knowledge on some level. Some people have referred to this type of knowledge as the Akashic records. Some people think that it's just mythological, that it's just folklore, that it's just some insane, crazy, lunatic, made-up fucking story. It's not. The defense science community has long had this knowledge. So, applying Bayesian mathematical techniques, different predictions, estimations are assigned a certain value in terms of hierarchy, in terms of probability of occurrence. And I can say to you that it was known that Barack Obama would become the president of the United States. The U.S. intelligence community knew that Barack Obama would in fact be president of the United States. So it gets even crazier. So when you look at what we're doing at CERN, and you look how CERN and Google work together, because CERN and Google are both using D-Wave quantum computers that are military grade, that are classified systems. When you look at the D-Wave system and how it operates by way of quantum qubits, the military, CIA, IARPA, by the way, IARPA was one of the agencies involved in the future predictions program. And the reason I brought this up, I said IARPA, the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency. I'm not talking about DARPA. DARPA is a component, even though it says that it's not, and it claims to be completely separate from that of IARPA, but I've spoken with people from both IARPA and DARPA. You do the math. So, IARPA at Fort Meade, working with universities, the Department of Defense, and facilitating this future predictions program, individuals, that is, persons, folks from mainstream society, were asked questions over a course of many years. Started with 2 years for the original program that was public, and then that morphed into a completely different program. Now, what I was told by one of the PhDs, researchers, was that total information awareness that had been banned by Congress, it was that person's conjecture, we'll just say conjecture, that total information awareness, though having been banned by Congress, the people who authored total information awareness, when Congress banned TIA because it was according to some, deemed to be unethical and intrusive. When it was banned, some folks thought to themselves, okay, well, the name TIA has been banned, so we'll just reimage it under a different program title. So take it for what it's worth. Take it with the grain of salt, as you will. As stated, that's what I was told. So, in my view, total information awareness, it was never truly ever a program that was abolished that became defunct. It did not become defunct in my view. It did not go away, and it was not terminated. It was simply re-imaged under a different program title. Next, folks in this program were asked to choose from among various geopolitical categories of information types. So someone could go into this system, portal, if you will, and look at a list of these different categories of geopolitics, geopolitical information, science, technology, regional issues, disputes between India, Pakistan, North Korea, Ireland, the UK, European Union, China, America, US, foreign policy. And there were questions asked about future events beyond the year 2038. 2038. So let's see what. This is 2019, round it, make that 2020. Add 10 years, 2030. Add 2 years to that, 2032. I can say to you that the U.S. Defense Science Intelligence community knows that this planet with humans on it will be here beyond the year 2038. And nonetheless, this planet will be ultra advanced in terms of future advanced technology. So all this fucking bullshit that these climate change motherfuckers are talking about, I'm not saying that the ecosystem doesn't change over time. Their dire predictions? Yeah, man. There's a 99.9% probability that the crowd knows the truth. And the crowd that I'm referring to is the crowd that was sourced by the United States Department of Defense, IARPA, DARPA, CIA, NSA, and other agencies, of which the latter are secret agencies that folks in mainstream society don't even know exist. So whatever these motherfuckers are telling you on the news and all this shit about climate change and sea levels rising and this, and that, yeah, those things happen. Some of them. Yeah, over time. Yeah, cities need to be prepared for gradual increase. Yeah, guess what? It also takes millions of years and hundreds of years and thousands of years for those changes to take place. We just have to have the technology to stay on top of things. In terms of having only 12 years left on this planet, man, shut the fuck up, man.